Welcome to Raw Take, everyone, the lifeline to your unfiltered media experience. Before we start the show, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, like, comment, and share. I'm your host, Gion Thomas, and this is the Monday live stream. And we have a special guest, Nino Ibarra, running for the mayor of Dubuque, Iowa in 2021. And today he'll be talking about his policies and his vision for Dubuque. So go ahead, Nino. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Hey y'all, I'm Nino Erba, and been living in Dubuque for about 9 years now, and just being very active in the community, helping out with different organizations, whether it's the NAACP or the DSA, or just being busy and being kept up to date about city politics, and just doing my part as being, an active young person and, trying to, get rid of the systems that are completely, trying to, make our lives miserable. That's basically it.
And that is awesome, man. I think, and like one of the things that we always talk about on the show, we need more people to run for office, get active in office, and we love that you're doing that. So tell us a little bit about some of your policies. I know looking into your policies, you want to urbanize, you want to modernize the housing infrastructure. I know another thing you want to do is you want to fight for a $15 minimum wage. So if you could definitely tell us a little bit about that, that'd be awesome.
Right. So as far as housing goes, I have literally been homeless for over a year and a half, from the middle of 2018 to basically February of 2020. And, homelessness is one of those things that you absolutely have to experience it yourself so that you can be able to, enact the policies that end it. Like, you can't just be like, visiting people and be like, hey, what can I do to help fix this? No, like, you just have, like, it wrecks you. Like, homelessness, it just devastates your mental health. And if you're not lucky, your financial and material well-being is just going to plummet as well. So what I want to do is get rid of it homelessness by 2030 by placing people, like creating a public housing initiative, placing people who are homeless into single family housing so that they can be able to sustain themselves. And as far as like the $15 minimum wage goes, like, unfortunately, the state legislature has stripped the ability of cities and counties to be able to raise it ourselves wholesale. But I think there are ways to be able to circumvent that, because the city of Dubuque is its own employer, and there's really nothing that's restricting us from being able to raise our minimum wage to $15 an hour. So I'm going to just do that because it's the right thing to do. And like the biggest pillar for me is sustainability, because, and earlier this month in August, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, basically released a report that was what they did was basically slam down on the big red button for, like, we were at DEFCON 1 when it comes to climate change. Like, there are some things right now with climate change that they have declared irreversible, like the rising of the sea levels and the melting of the ice caps. But if we get our act together and throw literally every resource that we have to ending and reversing climate change, then we still have a shot of saving human civilization. And that is what I'm going to do with Dubuque, as on my part is, at the bare minimum, go to net zero emissions. And then if we succeed at that, push even harder to go carbon negative by 2030, because that's literally what we have to do in order to be able to, effectively fight climate change.
Yes, man. I mean, down here in the South, we are experiencing climate change right now, right as you speak.
Mm-hmm.
The hurricanes that are happening right now, prayers for Louisiana and New Orleans and the surrounding areas. I mean, it's time that, even at a local level, that we start to do things with climate change, because the federal level, they're not doing anything. So that's why
exactly. Sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so like in terms of like the hurricanes, like I mean, the thing about being a millennial is that like we laugh. It's like that a cliche. We laugh so that we may not cry. Like I grew up, and it's like during 2005, Hurricane Katrina basically destroyed New Orleans, and like instead of cleaning up the problem and fixing everyone's houses and treating people like they were the true victims of a natural disaster that they were, we saw the George W. Bush administration use every opportunity they could to basically do as much damage as they could of what actually made New Orleans great. Like they allowed private interests to come in and turn their public school system into all charter schools. Like people either just their help got delayed from FEMA, or it didn't come back. They didn't receive it at all. So tens of thousands of people had to flee New Orleans because they had no other choice. And like when I'm seeing, like it gets like when I saw that and I was looking at the damage that Ida is doing to New Orleans, and it's like you're jaded when you look at the damage that Ida did, and you're thinking, I mean, her Katrina was worse. I mean, it's not good at all, but it's not, Katrina bad.
Yeah.
It's just so incredibly frustrating that having to live every day like we're hedging our bets, like we're thinking, oh, it could be worse because we've already experienced, the basically the tearing down of every kind of expectation that we had, like when the Bush the Bush the 2000 election, with the Supreme Court and everything, it tore down our faith that we had democratic institutions that believed in presenting to us what democracy actually is. Then 9/11, it was a shattering event, but then the Bush administration, once again, they just did everything possible to destroy what possibly good intentions could have come from that. And then came Iraq War, and also like Enron and the housing bubble, a financial crisis. And then so like we were thirsting for change, and we thought that came in the form of Barack Obama. And I still I have to admit that his 2008 campaign was magical because it felt like we were, filling ourselves up with optimism for the first time in so many years. And then things just did not get fixed like the way they were supposed to. Like
no real change came.
What?
I said no real change came like that. That whole thing changed. That whole it was just he was just another corporatist at the end of the day.
Yes, and even if there were things that good that he did end up doing, like it wasn't the kind of fixes that we needed. And we go through this and we're just tired and just like getting more jaded, and then we see Bernie Sanders come out of nowhere, and we're finding hope in him, and that terrified the Democratic, the National Party. So, Hillary Clinton being Hillary Clinton, she and the DNC threw everything that they did at him to, make him look like that he was not a viable choice for the Democratic nomination. And in the end, she ended up succeeding. But like, if you have to, I mean, there are very few things that Trump actually did that was good, but you have to take stock and think, like, if Hillary Clinton did end up getting elected in 2016, what exactly would have been a difference that would have resulted in a different outcome? Like, we saw how many people in the Democratic Party just get utterly destroyed in the midterm elections. Like 2018, the Senate map was so bad that like the idea of the Republicans gaining like something close to a near supermajority is absolutely like
terrifying.
Exactly. And so like even on a good year for the Democrats when they were, up against, Donald Trump, they still lost Senate seats because the people that existed in the Senate were just terrible. And so
they were Republican-like. This is what I always try and tell Democrats. Don't try and run like a Republican because Republicans will just elect a Republican. They don't want to elect a Democrat that's like a Republican. They're just going to elect a Republican. So why not try and get a base that of young voters, young progressive voters that want real change. That is always my message to the Democratic Party, to progressive candidates, to Democratic candidates, get those young people because, or not only just get those young people, don't like run on working class issues, run on issues that's going to affect people who don't have a say so in the system.
Yeah, I mean, like this T-shirt, 100% Iowa clean energy. Like, why can't that just be, a slogan that they can be able to run on, or a policy that they can be able to run on? And it's like the census data came out, and like, the United States has never been as multicultural as it has been in its entire history. We might be the most multicultural society in the history of this planet. And we need to be able to bring in people that, are going to bring in policies that reflect that, reality. Like, and in Dubuque County, there was a fascinating website that showed just how much each individual county has, progressed in the ensuing decades going back to 1980. And like, Dubuque is still, overwhelmingly white. That's an unfortunate reality for us in this area. Like, we just broke, 10%, non-whites. But I gotta say, like, the fact that we are moving towards this cultural future is, a bit inspiring, but unless if we put in people that are actually going to enact policies that show us that we are looking at the situation that we're facing seriously, and make sure that we're actually fixing our problems. Like, that's the problem with Obama's presidency, was that we looked to him to fix the problems that we had, and the United States got so much more multicultural from 2008 to 2016, but when push came to shove, there was not the inspiration that came from Hillary Clinton that it spoke to us as young people, that the Democrats were looking at us and were taking us seriously. They, like, the parties, like, and this is probably cynicism on their part, but like the parties still act as if like the baby boomers run the world. Like, they're still bending over backwards to cater to this aging, dying, still overwhelmingly white population that they'll point to, like, but these are the people that are the ones that come out to vote en masse, and like, but you're not giving any reason for young people to vote. Like, they want to have it both ways. They want to be able to please all of the, biases and prejudices of the older generation that gets them, the votes from the people that they think are the ones that come out in force. But but they also are whining about why nobody else is wanting to vote. And they just be like, it's like this meme from a Simpsons episode where Ned Flanders' parents are like, we've tried nothing and we're all out of options.
Yes, man. That is so totally true. The Democratic Party wants you to come vote for their policies, and they're not offering us anything. They're not running on a $15 minimum wage. I mean, some are, but that's not the national plan. I mean, even Biden took out legalizing marijuana. Why would you do that when not only a large majority of Democrats agree with that, a large majority of Americans agree with that? So why would you take that out of your platform? That makes no sense.
Yeah, you really have to be out of step when, Clarence fucking Thomas is advocating for legalizing marijuana. And this is, one of the most conservative justices that has ever been on the Supreme Court. Yeah, and it's mind-boggling. And I got to tell you, the Dubuque's, it's the elected officials in Dubuque City Council, all 6 of the at-large and ward members and the mayor, all of it is nonpartisan. And that is practically the only reason why I would risk myself going into this, because I am not going to allow myself to be compromised and bogged down by party politics. And that is particularly I wish that every, political race could be nonpartisan, or at least, sparsed out in a way that party politics does not become an overriding force. Because if I was living in a city with, an overwhelming, machine like Chicago, I don't think that I could be I don't think I could be inspired enough ever to try and, do a race, because it is progressing in a positive direction. There are several aldermen that either are members of the DSA or identify as socialists, but you've got, a mayor, Lori Lightfoot, who is still not doing anything to rein in the Chicago Police Department. And I just think that having a nonpartisan, race makes it so much more, I don't want to say cleaner, that's not the right word for it, but it makes it so that we can be able to run as ourselves, as opposed to what the party machine wants us to run as.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, any candidate who just tries to run a campaign like that, to me, that's not really having a backbone. You have to run on policy. And that needs to be the clear-cut, straight message for any candidate. Run on policy. Run on how you're going to change people's lives. Stop worrying about I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. Those are just terms at this point in time, because really you have people who are going to serve the interests of the people, or you're going to have people who are going to serve the interests of the corporations and the donor class. So it doesn't matter about Republican or Democrat. What are your policies? What are you going to do for me?
And that's been frustrating as an outside candidate, because I can tell you that if we were just running on straight up policy, it'd be no contest. I deserve to be in that seat. The problem is that, sorry, itchy nose. The problem is that, my opponents, the filing window ended on last Thursday. So I officially have 4 other, opponents who are on the ballot. We've got 2 sitting council members, one who isn't afraid to call himself fiscally conservative, which instantly gives me bad vibes. Yeah. We got one who was my professor at college, and I like him. He's a good guy, but his tenure in the city council has not been that inspiring. I have one who basically is a fascist, and I'm not afraid to say that about my opponent, because her beliefs and that stuff, I just get a lot of bad vibes, being an anti-masker and anti-vaxxer combined, and wanting to ban, government from being able to do that, and, thinking that government only should run the way that you want it to, and just dump, every resource that you want into the police department. That to me speaks that you're a fascist. The police department here is already bloated, and it is riddled with problems, and I would love to purge it of all of them. But if you're a Blue Lives Matter kind of person, I see you as a fascist. The 4th person, I don't know him well, too. He just entered in the last minute. I like him, but if he was to make any, I don't see him particularly making any kinds of ground. I haven't seen any yard signs from him. in terms of policy, I would win instantly because I'm the one who actually takes our problems seriously and wants to be able to implement the policy changes that would get our problems fixed. But, you know, I don't think it's just Dubuque. It's a problem everywhere, but particularly in Dubuque, there seems to be this weird, cliquey kind of situation where the reason that the two sitting city council members would have the edge on me isn't just because of their incumbency. It's also because they have their connections, and people get warm, fuzzy feelings when they think about, that, oh, this person, he could be mayor, he could be such a good idea, but when you hold their policies up to close scrutiny, then it's not that inspiring. Our city government, they just issued what they call their goals and priorities for the next several years moving forward. And I was so mad when I saw that because with sustainability and climate change being literally the number one issue, what they put out for that, it was infuriatingly vague. It's basically lip service and saying they want to implement this, survey plan that they implement. Let's just say that there's nothing concrete that they've promised about fighting climate change. They don't even want to plant trees. It's the simplest thing in the world. Find the areas where there are no trees and plant trees so that we have tree equity. I'm tired of, canvassing and sending out mailers downtown and having to be overheated and drenched in sweat and having it get in my eyes because there's no goddamn trees around to keep me, shaded and cool.
Yeah.
So climate change is not a top priority, but this boondoggle involving, an entertainment center that the city has a stake in is they've been doing this, they've been wanting to try to come up with a plan to reinvent this arts center, this entertainment venue basically that is in the center of Main Street. I like it because they host a lot of events that I like. And I don't have a problem with the overall structure, but the actual, place of it, there are still structural problems. It's a money loser, and they waste a lot of things like electricity because they need to run both the heater and the air conditioner at the same time to create the optimum temperature in the building. That is not sustainable at all. But they continuously are peddling this idea that all we need to do is tear down the event center and put in this new and improved and shiny one, and we will get more people coming into our venues. We can get bigger names that will draw those people, and then it'll start paying for itself. And they've been doing this for several years now, and they're still fixated on that. Meanwhile, it is literally uncomfortable to go outside, and you're not doing anything to help fix that. To me, that kind of action is the kind of thing that discredits the campaigns of the two sitting city council members that I'm in, because either they were deliberately taking part in making sure that didn't happen, or they were too cowardly to make sure that necessary stuff was put in there.
And it just goes to show where a lot of cities' priorities, they are literally jacked up. They are worried about trying to get more money instead of trying to save the infrastructure, the people, from climate change. It's just for me, what I don't understand is people can see this. Temperatures are rising out the roof. Our infrastructure can't even keep up with these temperature changes. Out here in Texas, our grid shut down twice. It shut down.
Oh yeah, don't get me started about the Texas power grid.
Exactly. It shut down twice. It shut down in the winter and in the summer. This stuff is just wild. Nino, are you there? I think we're having some technical difficulties. Hold on. Yeah, guys, we're just having a little technical difficulty.
What did you do?
We're still on, man. Are you still on there? Hold on. You're coming back. Man, we start talking about the Texas power grid, and we start having power issues, guys. All right, you're back on, man. You're back on. It's all good.
Sorry about that. For some reason, the Wi-Fi in my building just decided to temporarily die and revive itself. And you know what? We probably could be able to fix this problem if we were allowed to be able to build municipal internet for ourselves. Like Chattanooga, Tennessee has the best internet in the country, and it is completely municipal. It's a 100% municipal, built and owned, and like they have internet speeds that rival that of Asian countries. Like, why can't that be the standard for us?
Exactly.
And,
universal broadband.
Yeah, that's exactly just so many yeah, exactly. And I gotta tell you, man, that's the problem with the current situation we're in, is that the status quo is either too complacent or too arrogant to can stop completely just shooting themselves in the foot, trying to make themselves look as incompetent and discredited as possible, and necessitating the need to change guards to a more progressive direction where our problems will actually get fixed. But here in Dubuque, as well as alarmingly other parts of the country, the opposite is happening, where the people that we need to reach out to and help fix their problems the most are being sucked in by the allure of right-wing extremism and fascism, because they buy into this idea that the problems that we are experiencing aren't because of a discredited status quo that needs to be thrown out wholesale. That's their argument, but their argument is that your problems are also coming from people that we do not like, whether it's Black people, whether it's feminists, whether it's gay people, whether it's disabled people, whether it's, people on the left. Like, they will literally use every single oppressed demographic as a scapegoat and try to convince these suffering white people that the way to fix our problems is to basically emulate Hitler and Mussolini and the other fascist or fascist wannabe leaders that have occurred throughout history. And the fact that it's happening in Dubuque, and the fact that fascist opponent of mine actually has a legitimate chance to win this election, because I've seen Dubuque County, it was 6 straight decades of voting Democrat, and then they voted for Trump twice. That is why I have to be in this race, because I will not allow the possibility of having a fascist ascend to, the highest elected position in my city so that she can be able to ruin the city that I love, because she does not care about people like me. I was at the Dubuque County Fair earlier this summer, and I got to tell you, by the time that I left, I did not feel safe for my life, because it wasn't just all the MAGA kind of merchandise that was floating around. I can be able to deal with that. But when you have a flag that has the LGBT acronym, and be like L is Statue of Liberty with the Blue Lives Matter line through it, G is guns, B is beer, and T is Trump, that I interpret as a threat to me and my community, because police brutality, especially against the transgender community, is still going on. Hate crimes against the LGBT community, particularly, again, the transgender community, has skyrocketed since Trump, ascended to office. And not to mention that Trump was one of the most deliberately anti-LGBT administrations in modern history. Like, these right-wing extremists think that, life is fine because we're all the same, and the people who are just ruining our lives are the people that are trying to rain on our praise. Like, no, you literally do not want to have people like me existing in the same space as you. Yeah. And that's why I am not going to be obligated to represent you as a constituent when I am mayor. I am not going to listen to your arguments if they are based in hatred. We need to be able to get our shit together and actually pass policies that fix our problems once and for all. So when we plant more trees in downtown, when we install solar panels on every house, when we provide housing for our homeless population, when we, build more roundabouts, decriminalize marijuana, implement all of these policies that actually raise people's living standards, the threat of fascism will wither, hopefully, because the only reason that this kind of extremism and hatred that is being able to flourish is because the problems that we're facing aren't being fixed. Exactly. So when they see somebody who is part of two oppressed communities actually take the step of addressing those specific problems, not just in my community, but in other communities as well, they'll be able to see that they actually feel like they are being listened to. They feel like that what they say actually matters. And when that happens, we feel more connected as a community. We start reaching out to one another. We start actually healing the wounds that have been inflicted on us and making sure that our city, genuinely becomes the city that I know it can be, but we're not there yet because those wounds haven't been allowed to heal.
Yeah. And we need more representation in our government, man. We need more people, more of the quote unquote outsiders, the blacks, the LGBTQ community, minorities, the poor, the disenfranchised, the people who they tried their hardest to keep out. We definitely need those people in a say of government to hold positions. So so government doesn't just cater to one sect of the people, doesn't just cater to the white business class, the white business owner, because that's honestly what it caters to.
Right, I agree with you on that, but coming of political age during the Obama administration, I also learned just the sheer limits of what represent what
exactly. I get what you're saying. Yeah, what just representation can do. Like, you gotta have and also behind representation, like always, you gotta have the policy. Exactly.
And that's Obama, the election of Barack Obama as president was absolutely necessary because of our incredibly ugly history of racism and genocide and slavery. Yeah. Having the first black man of one of the most white supremacist countries in modern day history was a sign that we are willing and ready to move beyond that history. But so just having him be in office only did so much. And when people felt and saw the limitations of what that did, without the policies for him to back up, showing that how much he was able to improve the issues that were still, we were faced with in 2008. Not only did it provide, less inspiration for someone like Hillary Clinton to move in and say how inspiring she wasn't. It provided there was already instant backlash that happened when Obama got elected, but it was still like it was simmering. It to the point where we did get to a place in 2015 where someone like Donald Trump was able to descend that escalator of his and swoop in and say all the things that Republicans wanted to but couldn't say because they would have been ostracized, and like be having all of these bad things, whether it was calling Mexicans drug traffickers and rapists and stuff, and having literally everything bounce off of him, like, because everybody who was a fanatic for Donald Trump, and they still are, they never cared about any of that stuff because they saw him as their messiah. They saw him as a representative figure that encompassed every bias, hatred, prejudice. He embodied all of the negative stuff and celebrated that. Like, if they're gonna if they're gonna call me racist, I might as well be as racist as possible because I know that I could be able to get away with this stuff. And like, we should have been able to have somebody as a major party candidate to be able to rise up to that challenge, and Hillary Clinton was not it. Joe Biden barely won. Like, I don't care what the electoral college numbers were. If you look at the actual vote totals when you go from state to state, like Arizona, Pennsylvania, and others, like, it was blindingly close.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that Trump was able to gain ground on literally every, posed demographic except for white men, the fact that he gained ground on all of those demographics is stunning, because it showed just how empty how empty Biden and the Democrats' national message was. They were literally one note. That one note was, we need to get rid of Donald Trump. And it barely worked. Like, they can say it worked, but it was by this literal skin of their teeth, when it should have been an absolute landslide. Like, people were predicting a blue tsunami, and you can blame the pollsters, you can blame the Republicans that lied to the pollsters because they didn't want to admit that they were actually supporting Trump. But at the end of it, the people that are most to blame for the disgusting, I'm going to just call it that, disgusting outcome was the Democrats themselves. Like, they lost seats in the House in an election year where their candidate won. Like, why didn't Nancy Pelosi, get ejected as House leader? Or even when, she lost so many seats prior to that. And the fact that the outcome of the Senate literally hinged on 2 Georgia runoffs, there never should have been this tension about whether or not they needed to become senators in the first place to make sure that the Democrats actually won the Senate. It's like, and then they have the audacity to send these constant emails about like how razor thin our majority is, and I'm just like, whose fault is that? Like, these people live in their own reality, and it's not the one that people like me are experiencing. Like, I may enjoy this apartment, but I only live in this apartment because it's rent controlled, and I'm in the income bracket that allows me to live in this apartment. Like, they don't care about this. Like, they want to be like, oh, the Republicans aren't letting us do anything, and it's like, I'm just at a loss, and I'm like, how I can be able to get people, inspired about, what civic action and political action can do is if I can be able to ascend, for lack of a better word, to the position of mayor and show people that I'm listening to you, that I'm fighting for you, and that I am going to do what I promised I would do. Because people need to have that, assurance again, so that we can be able to heal our wounds, start progressing, and stop treading water, and not have to worry about our future, because it's getting harder and harder, every day to try and feel like there might actually be a chance for us to be able to not just survive but thrive as a human civilization, and particularly with my generation.
Yeah, and man, that's what you just said right there is something that we need to do. We need to stop just trying to survive and actually thrive. To me, I don't understand why why is that such a hard concept? This is the richest nation the world has ever seen. And when you look at MMT, modern monetary theory, when you start to look at that and you start to see how America control our own dollar. Why can we not start to get rid of student debt? I mean, Biden just came out and I think he got rid of 20 billion. I mean, that's good and all, but it's trillions. We have trillions of dollars in student debt.
Like forgiving student debt, but only for people with, major disabilities. It's like, I have a disability. I mean, I don't have student debt, and I'm appalled that that's how small his imagination is. Like, doing just that kind of stuff where it's like, I am showing you the image of looking like I am doing good, but I'm not going to do what is absolutely necessary to change the problem. Like,
it's incremental change.
He could, his administration or Congress or whomever could, with a swipe of a pen, erase the nearly $2 trillion in student debt, and it would be the largest economic windfall in decades. Like, if, people of my generation weren't, dishing out hundreds of dollars each month to be able to pay off student loans, they could be able to start using that money for things, not just necessities like food and clothes and rent and mortgage payments, but they could buy cars. They could buy new TVs. They could buy
the economy.
Yeah, new PlayStations, new Xboxes, all the kinds of, high-tech fancy stuff that people say will, help boost the economy and, to actually have a true recovery, as opposed to the one that they think they're trying to fool us with, where there's still over 5 million people that haven't recovered their jobs since the pandemic started, and they think that we're in a surging recovery or something. Like, it's like I said, these people live in an entirely different reality, and when all the information you're getting is from those people, you start living in an entirely different world than the ones that people who don't subscribe to that view live in. Like, if we started planting trees in downtown, if we started, fixing climate change and housing and public safety and all this kinds of stuff, then we'll actually start to live in the same shared world and not be, inundated with propaganda that is separating us. Like, whether it's, Fox News and, all of the right-wing talk radio, or if it's cable news like CNN and MSNBC and, the big three major networks and their, major news shows like on NBC and all that sort of stuff. Like, if we cut through that noise and actually start providing people with, the results of showing what kind of physical work is able to be accomplished, when we start, treating issues like they actually matter, then we might actually be, connected in a way that will help us escape the issues that we are facing. The perfect example today, I was watching MSNBC at my friend's house. There was one of the hosts there was, or was it CNN? Anyway, no, I think it was Jake Tapper on CNN. Anyway, that's not relevant. They were interviewing the mayor of New Orleans because Hurricane Ida came and thrashed New Orleans, and they were talking about the seriousness of the situation and what it means. And then they cut the interview entirely, and every basic channel like ABC and NBC and the news channels all cut so that they could hear this general talk about how we have finally ended the war in Afghanistan and all this kind of stuff. Just there is a literal lack of
human care.
Yeah. And I genuinely care about, the problems that we're facing. Like, I hate the fact that downtown Dubuque bakes in the sun because there are no trees around. We care about the fact that we have not done anything to fix our homelessness problem. And it's getting worse because now that the moratorium has been struck down again, people are going to be thrown out of their, rental units and stuff into the streets. And the shelters are already, strained to their limits as it is. And I care about, the fact that everywhere I go, there seems to be, just like there was a murder that happened of an 18-year-old by a 15-year-old kid that happened literally a block from where I live. I'm still haunted by that. But there's like two different reactions to that. Like, yes, I want the 15-year-old to face accountability for his actions. Who wouldn't? But I want to know who broke that 15-year-old to get to a point where they thought it was okay to, have a gun in their pocket and, shoot somebody that they had an argument with. Whereas there's this other argument that seems to be, taking over the minds of people, whether it's right-wing extremists or people who just get all their information from mainstream news, that even if violent crime is on the rise and the statistics, prop that up, the absolute worst way to deal with that is to flood our police departments with even more money. Like the Dubuque Police Department already is bloated because they take up way too much proportion-wise of our annual budget. And this is a department that is riddled with people who are sexist, who are misogynistic, who are racist. And when there was a lawsuit that was issued against them by a former police captain 2 years ago, where she experienced a lot of gender discrimination and sexual harassment. Fast forward to this year, the city ended up settling with her for almost $2 million, but not a single police officer who was named of that atrocious behavior in the lawsuit has faced any accountability. And that's the kind of, action by city government that makes people disillusioned, that you've got somebody who gets, when they settle this case and there aren't any specific people who are facing accountability, that's when that sends the message that you can do this stuff in this specific place and get away with it. Yeah. And that's what I want to change. I want to get rid of our city manager who has done a lot to destroy the character of our city. I want to get rid of the police officers who are predators and don't care about women or Black people or any of the outside groups. I want to get rid of the firefighters who've done possibly even worse behavior than the police officers when it comes to their disrespect towards women. I want to be able to create a city government that has, somebody in place for labor so that when you want to start a union, the city is actually on your side and wants to get the best contract between you and your employer as possible. It gets really hard when you're an empath and you just really just care so much about the problems that are facing your community. And day after day, there is very little show or even just pretending that the issues matter to the people in charge. I have to run because if I didn't, well, not just the cliche, if I didn't do this, who will? But if I didn't do this, I would probably end up with, a permanent mental health crater. Because as much as I'm taking my meds and it helping with my anxiety and depression and all the other stuff that I am struggling with. Like, none of these will actually get any true progress unless if the problems that I'm facing actually get fixed and I don't have to constantly worry about them. I don't want to live in a constant state of anxiety because I am seeing the planet burning and being swallowed by the oceans and nobody gives a fuck about them. I don't want to have to live in a city where when I see a police car, my two gut reactions are fear and just in unquenchable anger towards them. I don't want to have to be forced to live in poverty so that I can be able to get my SSDI benefits and live in a decent apartment because wages aren't up where they need to be in Dubuque and the housing market here sucks because landlords have way too much power. Like, I want to run because I want to help people, but I also feel like I have to run because I cannot give into despair. It's way too easy to give into despair. Yeah. And that is what's happening is that when we saw that, like with Donald Trump, it's like these mostly white people, like you actually have to, extend some sympathy towards them when they're faced with their situations and they're not being fixed. But that despair leads them to becoming as fascist and as extremist as Trump wants them to be, to the point where they don't care if kids in schools die of COVID because they think that mask mandates and vaccine requirements are an abridgment of their, liberty and their personal rights.
I mean, man, that is something that we're going through right here in Texas. I mean, so many people are speaking in these school board meetings, fighting for these kids. I mean, what I don't understand is why, kids are getting sick from COVID. Why would that be something that you fight against? Even if kids aren't getting sick, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's smart to wear masks. Why common sense would say, well, hell, even if kids are at a lower risk, just wear the mask. Like, kids don't have a problem wearing the mask. That's parents putting it in their kids, in that child's head, that they have a problem wearing a mask. And some kids are going to have a problem. But I'm from what I've heard from a lot of parents online, a lot of people, it's not the parents. It's not the kids. It's really the parents.
Yeah, like we live in a topsy-turvy world where just a couple of generations ago, there were like blockbuster length lines of ordinary Americans who were literally lining up to get the polio vaccine because everyone understood that polio was a disease that needed to be eradicated because children were dying by the thousands every single year. And we have virtually eradicated polio. And now we've got these parents who are literally fighting to make sure that their child is put in as much risk of getting the COVID as possible. That makes about as much sense as my opponent, who is a fascist, thinking that it's okay to host an event to raise money for veterans, despite the fact that she's the embodiment of everything that our grandparents and our great-grandparents risked everything in World War II to defeat. Like, you don't get to act like a fascist and think that the people who risked their lives to defeat fascism, like, the two don't correlate with each other at all. It is offensive. Like, it is spitting in the faces of our soldiers who literally risked their lives to make sure that that the world did not fall to people like Hitler and Mussolini. Like, somebody has to bring just not this city, but, our country back to the lived reality we're in. And I feel like that I'm the only person in this race for mayor who thinks that I can be able to do this. And I just want to be able to, I just want to feel like I can risk being happy again. I want to be able to provide, a climate where it's okay to be able to smile once in a while, because you actually feel like you can have optimism for the future, and you can start feeling that warm, fuzzy feeling inside of you because you think that things are finally going the right way. And if I can be able to provide that, not just for myself, but for people of my generation and younger people and older people as well, then it's worth it.
Yeah, man. And we need more young people. We need more people running on policy. We need more fighters in this space to run for office. I mean, we're never going to get change, or the change that we want to see, unless we fight. And that fighting comes in so many different ways. That comes in the form of protesting, that comes in the form of organizing, that comes in the form of running for office. That is going to be the things that are the tool. That is the tools that we have to make an impact in our system, and we just got to use those tools.
Right. And also, it's also about how you implement them. Like I've maintained the ethos that, like what you want, you can call it revolution, you can call it, true social change, you can call it whatever you like, but it requires a multi-pronged attack. Like protesting in and of itself can only do so much. Organizing in and of itself can only do so much. Electoral politics in itself can only do so much. But when you combine those tools, then you have a full arsenal that will truly, enact the change that you see for yourself. Because you can protest all you want with or without permits, because I've seen way too many protests that are way too polite. You can, organize, and, I am been inspired by the actions of unions across this country, and just the emboldened, actions in places like the Frito-Lay factories, or the Nabisco factories, or the teachers unions, or all of that. There's been a reawakening of the fire that has been missing for way too long among the unions, and they're getting bigger and getting bolder, and that is inspiring. But there's only so much that those strikes can be able to do before people start reverting back to Reagan era tactics of Nabisco, is shutting down all of its operations. So I go to the grocery store and I can't buy the flavor of Triscuits or Oreos that I want. Well, tough shit. I would rather be able to wait a while to get double stuffed Oreos than read about how Nabisco workers are forced to work every day in 12-hour shifts and are not allowed to be able to, take care of themselves. And then the company decides to, change their policies that would lead them to literally losing tens of thousands in their salaries a year. And, and if they succeed in making sure that Nabisco never pulls this shit again, I'm going to be happy about that. But that's where electoral politics comes in, because because all the strikes providing positive examples are good, but until we get, placed in, written law, like there is with the PRO Act, then the union situation is not really going to gain much ground until we have those certified protections in place. And, it's a perfect situation where it's what matters to you more? Is it, policy and human rights, or is it your own selfishness and convenience? Because there was a story that dropped a few weeks ago that Amazon wants to plop a warehouse in Dubuque, and they are looking for people to start working at the warehouse. And I just learned last week that there is nothing that the city council can be able to do to stop them from doing that, because it's between two private companies, and they're not looking to actually build something new that requires the city council to step in and say, no, you need a zoning permit for this, and you need to pass all of these musters. Nope, it's just Amazon's coming and it's inevitable. And when I read stories about how Amazon workers literally have to pee in bottles and use trash cans as makeshift toilets because they're not allowed to use their bathroom breaks, and how co-workers of theirs are dying on warehouse floors and they can't do anything to help them out in a medical emergency because they might lose their job if they deviate from their station. Like, that is not something that I want for Dubuque at all. There is no amount of pay and benefits packages that could ever, for me, justify not being able to use the bathroom on a shift.
I mean, what kind of working conditions are we providing for our workers if we let companies do that? I mean, what is this, the 1800s when we had that stuff going on? That's asinine that you know, that even Amazon, even in this day, can get away with stuff like that. I mean,
I was looking closely at, you know, the developments that were happening in Bessemer, Alabama, and I thought it was incredibly brave of those people to, you know, in Alabama, one of the most heartless states when it comes to, you know, tearing down unions or not caring about people's union status, and Amazon just, you know, did everything they could, harassment, intimidation, everything that you think would be illegal, they did, and the union drive failed. And I'm glad that the National Labor Relations Board declared that the election results illegal because of Amazon's, you know, bullshit. But until they hold a second election and are able to certify a union and be able to have that, you know, watermark achievement under their belt, I feel terrified about the idea that they might try the same thing. Like, I don't want Dubuquers to feel like they are in danger of their lives or their safety or their privacy because Amazon does not give a fuck about any of that. They are in it for the money and they will do everything in their power to protect that. And I really want Dubuquers to try and care about that stuff, but it's not just a matter of trying to disseminate that information to them. It's about breaking the bubble of convenience that too many of them live in. Like, I know that you have an Amazon account, and I know that you find it convenient and amusing that you can be able to watch shows like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon Prime, and that you can get your Whole Foods delivery by drone. You think that it's cute and all that sort of stuff, and then go around and then be able to be of the mindset of, oh, we have an Amazon warehouse in Dubuque. That drone can come to me even faster now. And I don't want to be able to have, you know, so many people think that the convenience of having your delivery come to you faster is more important than the rights of workers who deserve bathroom breaks. Like, where have we arrived where people think that's more important to them? Like, I don't understand that selfishness. I don't understand that level of ignorance.
We're literally reverting backwards. I mean, we have signs that are asking for 14, 15-year-old, 13-year-old children to work in fast food restaurants. I mean, we are literally reverting backwards. So it's really crazy, the stuff that we have going on here in this country.
It would be one thing if it was, you know, happening all over, you know, everywhere. It was asking for 14 and 15-year-olds, but people do not understand just how dangerous it actually is to work in fast food, because places like McDonald's, you will most likely get a grease burn if you're working near a fryer, and they will not allow you to get, you know, first aid if you get burns. I've heard of stories where people have literally used condiments to be able to treat their burns, like mustard. Like McDonald's, like fast food places, not just McDonald's, are just they're not safe for children to work in, and they want 14 and 15-year-olds to sustain, you know, severe burns because they can't find people wanting to work for them, because people understand the bullshit that goes on behind, like, and it's that idea that, you know, where's the line? Where do people, you know, finally say enough is enough? I do not feel that my dollars going to McDonald's to try and get a Big Mac and an actual McFlurry where the machine doesn't break down. If a 14 or 15-year-old is getting, second-degree burns to try and get that meal to me, am I being a good person by letting that child, endanger their safety to make sure that I get my food? Like, those are questions that shouldn't even be controversial.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's not that people don't want to work. People want to work. People don't mind working. People don't want to work for shit ass wages for $10 an hour, $9 an hour. I mean, hell, even in some places in America, $15 an hour is not even comparable to living. You take that to California or New York, I mean, you're making less than what the standard of living is. So it's not that people don't want to work. People want to be compensated for their work.
Exactly. Like, it's compensation for the work that they're doing so that they can be able to have a living standard, not just because there would be ordinarily dangerous places to work at, whether it's McDonald's or, the meat plants or just any of those places. But now we have the added danger of a pandemic where I worked in a restaurant for 2 years. And to be honest, like, I loved it before the pandemic, and I still don't have any regrets about working there. But I got to tell you, having to work in a restaurant for nearly a year where people just literally act like they do not give a fuck about spreading the virus or any of that, like, it got to a point where my mental health was at, for lack of a better phrase, DEFCON 1, and I needed to leave.
Yeah.
And the wages that I was receiving were not even close to compensating for that. And like, if I had to go back there in the same exact situation, I would have to be paid a lot more than I was when I was working there. And it's just, I think, and it's nice that people are finally waking it up and being like, where do I draw the line? What is a good job for me where I can feel safe at work, where I feel like I'm justly compensated for the work that I'm doing, and I don't have to fear about, losing a limb or getting stabbed by equipment or getting the virus because I'm working with people that are either not masked or there's a lot of people surrounding me at any given moment. So, I think that I'm glad that it's happening. I still feel tentative about, where the narrative is going because there's still way too many people that think that because we have a labor shortage because people are lazy or because they're feeding off the hog of, big government and all that sort of stuff. But to be perfectly honest, I want to see people work in the restaurant position that I had with the wages that I was in and see how long they last. And I've said that before to other people. It's like, I had a lot of tenacity and I did appreciate the work that I was doing. But the work that I was doing, a lot of people would give up way too quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I also, before I really got heavy into politics, I worked as a dishwasher and a fry cook for a couple of years. So I know exactly what it's like to work in the restaurant industry. And, it's a lot of long hours, especially, out here in Texas, we don't have nowhere close to like a $15 minimum wage or anything like that. You might get paid, you might get started paying $9, $7, $8 an hour. And so, yeah, man, I definitely know that struggle. And I was working a job like that and going to school and, working on campaigns. So it's just that in and of itself is just a lot. And, a lot of people don't understand when I talk to a lot of boomers and a lot of people in the older generations, some of them don't even understand how hard our plight is and how, our dollars don't stretch as long as their dollars did. And so it's just, some of this comes from like them like needing to listen to us and us needing to infiltrate these spaces that they are in so we can make a huge fight for, what's actually affecting us and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? It's ironic that, after Trump got elected, everyone started talking about, the need for self-care and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, all the liberals that, pushed for self-care and, treating yourself and making sure that you got, what you deserve and everything. It's like, did they ever really, were they really ever have convictions about that? Because in their mind, self-care means, taking a bubble bath while sipping on champagne and stuff. But for us, self-care means maybe we do need to leave our jobs, and whether or not we go back to work for, in 2 months or 2 years, like however long it takes for us to be able to get our shit together and arrive at a place where it's okay to start work again with a fresh mind. Like, that's what we have to do for self-care. And when people, these liberals and all these other people are inconvenienced for the working class actually taking self-care and applying it to our daily lives, like, they get mad at us for inconveniencing you. Like, why does me risking my life in a pandemic, working in this, not job that doesn't pay me well at all, like, why does my removal from that job mean anything to you if you're inconvenienced? Like, why should it matter that you have to wait a little extra longer to get your fast food, to make sure that the supermarket shelves are stocked with the products that you particularly like? Like, it would be one thing if the stuff that we were doing actually had a massive impact. Like, if we all left, if people, walked out of work because they couldn't take, manufacturing of medical products anymore because of, X, Y, and Z kind of abuses and other stuff that they're doing, and that prevented, manufacturers from creating ventilators that would save people's lives because of COVID, that could be a situation where we would need to have a balanced talk about where does the line get drawn between people walking out of their jobs to avoid abuse and whether or not the people, entering those jobs know what they are getting into and the result of that on the general public. But when it's come to things like fast food, to food, like processed food production, to supermarkets, like, I think these people have lived so long with the expectation of being waited on hand and foot that they've forgotten what it's like to actually experience what inconvenience feels like. So now that they're feeling it, they feel like it's an affront to their lifestyle, that because I'm refusing to be exploited by you, that somehow you're the victim.
Yeah. And I want to add to this whole self-care notion. I mean, the 1% gets self-care every year in tax cuts. But when the working class wants to take a little bit of time off, it's a huge issue. To me, these double standards, man, that's what I don't like. And when the Democratic Party or whichever party, Green Party, the People's Party, DSA, whoever runs on, we are going to help the working class, we are going to help the disenfranchised people. These are our policies, and we are not afraid for them, or we are not afraid of them, or we are not afraid of messaging or running on them. That's when that's going to be the most valuable party ever, because you are taking people who are not involved and now making them involved
and showing results. Like, that's the thing that I want to do, is like, I care about results. Like, it is in my personality and possibly my nature as well to be a problem solver. Like, if I'm confronted with a problem, I want to fix it as much as possible. And it frustrates me when I am confronted with problems and I cannot be able to fix them because of limitations with things like my income, with my, physical distance from you. Like, I like people have been disillusioned to the point where they feel like nobody can be able to care for them, no matter how much, changing of the guards take place. But I want to be able to make people believe that, excuse me, I can fix this stuff. Or like I don't care how many feathers get ruffled. I am going to fire our city manager because apart from being corrupt, he's just plain incompetent. After 3 decades of being in his position, I don't care how much hate mail or threats to my physical safety I endure because of it. I'm going to purge our police departments and our fire departments of the bad people that exist in there. And if I don't provide any help to them, if they have to fend for themselves to hire new people, let them do that. Because if you have allowed this behavior to flourish in your culture, why should I feel any sympathy for you when you all of a sudden the people who get purged of this behavior are enough that it inhibits your ability? I care a lot about our fire department. I think they do an immense service to our community for putting out fires and putting themselves in danger to help people who are in fires and need medical emergencies. But I'm not going to turn the other way because you also disrespect women. That's not okay. And if it takes you months to try and regain your ranks, then that's the problem that you have put yourself into. And I don't care how much it costs. I have this ethos that if you have a conviction, the courage of your convictions, when it comes to a certain policy, the money will follow. So if it takes so many millions to buy trees and plant them all across Dubuque, I will find that money. It shouldn't be that difficult to scrounge up either new money or use, existing money from elsewhere to be able to buy trees and get them planted and nurtured and stuff. It shouldn't take that much more difficulty either to try and fund the buying and installation of so many solar panels across Dubuque. It's all about willpower. If you have the willpower, things happen. It's not that difficult. There's only so much talk that can happen before people want to see actual physical results. So when you see people coming onto your rooftop and installing solar panels and seeing your electricity bill drop each month because you're using a lot of renewable energy that wouldn't otherwise be coming to your house, then people will see that as a public good, and they'll reward you for it. Exactly. And when people, when they see trees getting planted and they find that is, actually comfortable to walk in downtown because you're shaded and you're cool and the trees are providing, a refuge that would have otherwise not have been there, they'll see that as a public good and they'll reward you. When you actually get things done, people respect you for that. And I feel like if I can be able to do that for our city government, we'll go a long way to fixing our problems.
Exactly, man. And I really commend you, bro, on like I said before, running, taking power into your own hands and saying that you're gonna change Dubuque, Iowa. I think, I hope more people jump on the bandwagon and, run for office in their local areas to, get that change going and, get activists, having more people who work with the community, who aren't just in these spaces, in these cliquish groups, because I understand in politics, things can start to be very cliquish. And so, you need outsiders to run, and you need the outsiders running on the right policy to run. So
right. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no! Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, man.
There's one other thing that is desperately lacking when it comes to courage in public office right now, and that is standing up to our state government. Because ever since the 2016 election, it wasn't just Trump. It turned our entire state government into a GOP trifecta. And they have had an absolute field day passing everything they want, whether it's stripping unions of their ability to, collective bargaining. That's what it was. They stripped them of that. They stripped cities and counties of their ability to raise their minimum wage outside of the state minimum wage, which they refuse to do, by the way. They have told cities that they cannot be able to, tell landlords that they are required to give people, who accept housing vouchers, which is our term of Section 8, to have a foot in the door when it comes to applying for, an apartment. They passed a Back the Blue law this year. They passed a voting restriction law this year. They have they've done literally everything that they want to do. They've banned mask mandates, and I'm sure if vaccine requirements ever were to be arrive as an issue, I'm sure that they would jump the gun to ban those as well. And you know what? I have not seen nearly enough courage from cities and counties and school boards to stand up to them. I do not tolerate Kim Reynolds' bullshit at all. I think that she is a liar. I think that she is someone who takes enjoyment in displaying her cruelty. I think that she is a cynical career politician who is abusing her status as an elected official to try and curry favor as the next rising star of the GOP by going on to Fox News and, being as Trumpian as possible. And I think that the amount of damage that she has done and the amount of suffering that we are experiencing, not just in Dubuque, but everywhere in Iowa, is sickening. And I, for one, am not willing to stand for that. Our County Board of Supervisors recently was told by our County Board of Health that they needed to pass things like mask mandates and, vaccine requirements and proof of, and our County Board of Supervisors, equally as unanimously as our board did, they cowered. They did not display any semblance of courage. They made excuses about how, as a board of supervisors, our job is more constrained and all that kind of, just excuses. That's all there is. And when it comes to doing all that stuff, implementing a mask mandate again, implementing vaccine requirements, requiring proof of vaccination, and wearing a mask to go into a place of public accommodations. If that's what the literal experts are telling me, the people who have spent decades of their lives getting degrees and studying the structure and, the behavior of viruses to be able to tell us that this is what we need to do to keep people safe, that's what I'm going to do, regardless of whether or not the state government is going to put sanctions on our city or they're going to try and destroy my career because they think that they can be able to tear me down. But I happen to think that these people are actually paper tigers, that the only reason that they've gotten away with the shit that they've gotten away with is because the quote unquote opposition let them walk all over them. And when people actually have a spine and tell you that what you're doing is not okay, I am going to act in complete defiance against you. If they do, in fact, it's a win-win situation, because if they do, in fact, retaliate against me, that shows that their cruelty is for real, and I think people will get turned off by that. And if they decide to not retaliate, then they really are paper tigers and they'll lose support because they don't actually have the courage of their convictions.
Yeah. Man, bro, I'm gonna wish you luck on your endeavors, Nino. We're gonna put your info in the description so everybody can find you and support you on your run for mayor, man. I think, like I said before, we need more people, just more young people, more activists in this space. I thank you for coming on the show, man. Is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I mean, if people want to learn more about me, my website is Nino Erba for dbqmayor.com, and I am willing to accept any and all donations because, like, I've got the willpower, but funds are hard to come by. So if you believe or if you're inspired by my campaign, then please funnel any and all funds my way so that I can be able to gain the leverage I need to mount a credible campaign. And yeah, just, the next time you see problems happening in your community and they're not getting fixed, just join an organization, run for public office, alter your lifestyle to where you feel like it needs to be so that you can live your life in complete honesty. Just stop being scared or find the courage that you need to be able to say that my life is not where it needs to be right now and I need to make a change. Find what inspires you and follow it.
Exactly, man. And I think that's a very great message to end on. So everyone, that is the Monday live stream. I'm your host, Gion Thomas. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any uploads. Also, you can find us anywhere where you can listen to podcasts. Thank y'all for watching. Thank you for Nino for being on, man. Everyone have a blessed day. We are...